It's the Uprising.
Welcome back. This is the Uprising. I have Landry Miller on the show again. He is running for City Council in Tulsa, Oklahoma, District 4. Thank you for coming on the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be back on the show.
Yeah, and you're officially running this time, so I definitely
That's
want you to tell me about what exactly did you do to qualify yourself for that, and
Yeah,
we're gonna get in a couple other things. So
awesome. Can't wait.
yeah, so the first question will be so on the last episode we did, you weren't eligible because some technical stuff that the establishment likes to put in safeguard, but you got over that issue. And how did you get over that issue?
Well, it actually is more technical mumbo jumbo, which I did not think I was going to work that word into this interview, by the way, but I'm glad we did. So I'll just give you a quick rundown of what happened. Essentially, so as we talked about last time, there's like a period after filing that people can contest your candidacy, which is what happened. And everyone we talked to, they were like, it's best to just, get out. Don't even worry about it. The next election will be all good. And so there was a hearing, and the person who contested my candidacy did not show up to that hearing. So therefore they could not prove whether I was eligible or not. So then the election board sat down and they looked it all over. They discussed it. They looked at whatever information they needed to. And then they held a vote and they chose unanimously to keep us on the ballot and encouraged us to move forward with the campaign. So that's what we're doing.
That's great, man. Like you were saying, last time we talked, you wanted to have a new voice in the district. So the first question I do have for you is, with an incumbent, what exactly is she not doing correctly for you to want to step up and run for office? And with those things she's not doing correctly, what can you do, if you do win, will do to help those issues?
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing is that right now, and this is something I hear from a lot of people, which is that it feels like Tulsa politics and Tulsa politicians refuse to make any kind of concrete decisions or commit to any actions because they want to get reelected. As most politicians do.
Yeah.
And in Tulsa, and especially right now, and I definitely agree, it is a big problem. It's kind of become the culture of Tulsa politics to be drowning in inaction and indecision. And right now we need a new generation of Tulsans to step in and lead the way into a future that actually values the voices of Tulsa, which is one of the things I am really talking about with a lot of people, which is saying, listen, we need people that are in there who are willing to make those decisions and willing to vote with the people and not with the other city councilors. I mean, the perfect example of that is on June 17th, when the city council voted 9-0 to increase the police budget by another $876,000 on top of their already $122.5 million budget, despite huge public outcry against it. But because city councilors tend to vote with each other, 9-0, which seems insane when there's that many people saying we don't want to give more money to the police. Those kind of decisions show exactly what the culture of Tulsa politics is right now. And that's something that we have to change. And specifically for District 4, we can go through a laundry list of things over the past 10 years that haven't been done or dealt with, but especially over the last couple. And I'm not one to sling mud at any candidates, but as someone who lives in this district, it's really tough to see things even as small as the pond in my neighborhood, which we keep being told is going to be cleaned up because it's kind of become a a lot of litter kind of collects there. And we've been told for a long time it's going to be cleaned up and continue to be told so, yet it's ignored because it's not in the pretty part of downtown.
Yeah.
You know, it's little things like that where we know that conversation's been had with our counselor, and even though they and their office tells us it's going to get done, we refuse to see, or we are yet to see any kind of change in that, while other ponds and other neighborhoods that have more traffic, well, they get cleaned up. So
Yeah, that's the problem with a lot of cities, ours and especially, is this: with the more affluent areas, they definitely get listened to, and the lesser, like you said, pretty areas don't get listened to, and that's one of the big issues. Inaction is just the favorite word for a lot of politicians.
yes,
They don't, because that's the thing. When you actually try to do things and you have principles and you try to enact those principles, you get scrutinized. And a lot of people fear that because they can get primaried and get replaced. And nothing, most politicians fear more than getting replaced in office, because
that's right.
those positions are really powerful and they pay well. And it's a lot of ego, a lot of things when it comes to ego for a lot of people. So let's hit on a couple of things. First thing, I want to kind of curious about, if you did get elected, what are a couple of things that you would try to enact for that district in your
Yeah, definitely.
first 90 days on trying to influence your fellow people of city council, you personally would try to advocate for, and try to just do it even if you can't get exactly that thing done?
Yeah, you know, I'll tell you about something that I've been having. This has become a pretty big talking point amongst, especially so. So one of the things we really are doing is empowering the voices of young people in Tulsa who have gone ignored for forever, but also working with low-income and minority communities and standing alongside them and saying something has to be changed. So in doing that, one discussion we've talked a lot about is income inequality. That is something that needs a huge overhaul and can be done. Many people think this is a state issue, think it's something that governors have to take care of and senators have to take care of. But one thing that I really think people don't understand is we can do this on a local level. Because despite Oklahoma having a statewide minimum wage rate, many working Tulsa residents struggle to afford even the basic necessities of life. And honestly, the health and the wealth of Tulsans is progressed and advanced when people are able to earn a living wage that allows them to build self-sufficiency. So as a city, we've always been on the forefront of progressive ideals and movements and actions for being embedded in the midst of a Red Sea. And that's why I would immediately advocate for a local city ordinance to actually raise the minimum wage for Tulsa workforce. This is something I haven't seen or heard any local politicians, city councilors, candidates for office even talk about, because people don't realize we can do that right here. There's a list of other cities that have done the same thing: Albuquerque, New Mexico, Chicago, Denver, Flagstaff, Las Cruces, Minneapolis, St. Paul, just to name a few of cities that have put in a local ordinance to raise the minimum wage. I mean, if we look at Oklahoma itself, Oklahoma, the state has next to zero investment in the workforce, because over the last 12 years, they have not increased the minimum wage. And the only reason they increased it last time is because the federal government increased the minimum wage. So we have to do something about that. That's the first thing that I would really push for, is trying to make sure, especially coming out of recovery from a pandemic, that we are trying to tackle the issue of income inequality.
Yeah. So what's a kind of like a reasonable minimum wage in your mind?
Well, right now it's $7.25 an hour.
Yeah.
And looking at different studies, anywhere from $10 to $12 is what you can pretty much get both sides of the aisle to agree on, because this is still a pretty Republican area. But, you know, we've seen a lot of success getting up to even $15 an hour, which is, you know, a very popular stance to say $15 an hour. And the studies that have been done say that that actually stimulates the economy, because when you get paid more, you're able to buy more, and nobody's just hopping on Amazon and buying out of the country with that money. Generally, all of that money, especially for lower income families, is going right back into the community for food and groceries and all these kinds of things that, and clothing, things that, you know, you can buy right here in our stores.
Yeah.
So honestly, that's a negotiable number, but it definitely needs to be increased by, I say, at least $3-4.
Yeah. I think $10 is definitely the lowest it should be going. I think 15 might be a little bit too much, but that definitely needs to be negotiated as well. And with the stimulus and the unemployment checks, it's still keeping our economy going. Now we've taken a huge hit, but you can see that when people don't have a whole lot of money, they spend that money. And if and a lot of people, if they haven't needed that stimulus necessarily yet, they're saving that money, which is good, or they're investing that money. Robinhood is an investing app. Their users have been skyrocketing since the pandemic as people want to get in the market, and that should be great for both sides of the aisle, because more investment in our economy, stock market helps everyone. So I definitely personally support increase in the minimum wage. I definitely support a UBI, Universal Basic Income. Now, I don't know if it's $1,000 a month, 500. That definitely need to negotiate as well. But things like that definitely need to, I think, as a federal government, not necessarily just a local government, need to consider, especially since this pandemic is really hitting us financially, and it's hitting a lot of people, like we discussed last time. Since we have discussed what's going on in District 4 last time we talked, has things improved when it comes to financial, or have they gotten worse, like the financial situation of the families in that district?
Boy, you know, that's hard to say, because of course, because District 4 is a very diverse district. So you see both sides of it. You see people that are doing very well, but you also see people that are really trying to figure out how to get by. And right now, with it being the beginning of a new month, people are really concerned with bills and with rent. And this is also something that is kind of a sensitive subject, because since this whole thing started, I haven't gotten to receive any money from unemployment. Just been barely scraping by. Been lucky enough to have a little put back in savings, have family and friends that, you know, chip in here and there and help out. But you know, that's a thing, is people, especially in their 20s and their 30s, we aren't really set to survive 6 months of a pandemic with no work. And the majority of, you know, generally speaking, the majority of the people of this age group, they work in restaurants and bars and retail shops, places that got shut down, and some that aren't even fully back open. So you're seeing a lot of people, especially young people, especially in the minority communities, and especially just in low income parts of District 4, that they're not sure what they're going to do come next month. They barely made it to this one. So there's a lot of emphasis that needs to be had on that. And there's a lot we can do. There's a lot of city programs that need to actually be funded by the budget, that are kind of typically ignored when it comes down to that. It was actually quite disappointing to see the budget this year because it seems like it's the first time in memory that the city council has just kind of said, all right, if that's the budget you want, send it on through.
Yeah.
Normally there's a decision process that goes into it, but kind of they were just handed it and they said, sure, this looks fine, and passed it on through and said, we'll worry about something else later. And a big part of that, you could contribute to the fact that there's now an extra fund of $1 million per council member that they can put into different things around the community that they care about. And they pretty much have that $1 million to do whatever they want pertaining to city and parks or whatever they're passionate about, whatever public interest it is. And a lot of people have been saying that that this year with the budget being passed like that, it's a little concerning, and they worry that basically the city councilors were bought off.
Yeah.
That's kind of a crude way of saying it, but so people are concerned, and especially people that are in situations where they don't have a lot of money. We see who does have the money and who's using it for what, and it's concerning. And that's why 2020 is such an important election, especially locally.
Yeah, it definitely is. With the whole unemployment checks, nothing's getting done currently in the Congress and Senate. Actually, Congress has already passed it.
Yeah.
Have the people in District 4 told you about the worries of the eviction crisis? Or has that hit District 4 yet? Or
It's definitely going to really quickly. People are very concerned about it. I haven't heard a ton yet because people seem to. One thing I've noticed is when people are living paycheck to paycheck and not even sure if that paycheck's coming, and this is, I would say this is a culture problem for the entire country, which is that when we are only looking 2 weeks ahead, because that's when our next paycheck's coming, we don't really look a month ahead. We don't look 2 months ahead. And so when that crisis does hit us and people start being evicted, because we kind of have been protected up to this point. We've been very lucky that people around here and landlords have been pretty restrained, which they're not going to be for much longer. And that's a real concern, especially because they become very predatory on people that don't have a lot of money. And so it hasn't really hit, and I don't think people are anticipating it yet. And it's very concerning, but we've been staying up to date. So we have a really great group of people that work with this campaign, and they've been helping keep in contact with some of these people that are really struggling. And we kind of say, like, what can we do to help? We don't want your vote. Like, we're not. If you want to vote for us, that's great. But we also want to make sure that you are also a Tulsan, and we want to make sure you're okay. And by investing in their lives, no matter how this campaign goes, we're helping Tulsa. And so we're trying to help out with little ways. We have some people that donate food, and there's also some great organizations in downtown Tulsa that are Food Not Bombs, 918, they're great. But it's just ways of trying to get food to people because right now they're so concerned about bills that they're really struggling. So, we've been helping out with a lot with that. And it's not really something we put on our Facebook pages or anything, because we're not exactly a group that runs around grandizing about social issues that we're helping out with to get sympathy and votes, So, yeah. So
yeah, that's good though. It shouldn't be just about getting Facebook likes and views and stuff. It's actually helping people, and that's important. And I'm glad you're doing that. A lot of people just don't do this for the right reasons. They do it for, like we were discussing, for power and for money and just position. And that's one of the reasons why nothing ever gets done, is because a lot of people are not in this for the right reasons. And that's the unfortunate thing. I got a couple more questions. Give me one second. Let's see here. Okay, so if the whole TikTok situation and it possibly being banned here or Microsoft buying it or everything like that. One, are you concerned about TikTok and them allegedly mining our data and using it for the China's communist government, or do you don't think that's a big issue? And kind of how do you feel about censorship in general? And do you think that's a kind of a censorship issue, or is that kind of more of a national security issue?
Yeah, see, it's such a, I never thought that a conversation about TikTok would involve so many different branches. But so we'll just tackle it a little bit at a time. Do I think that it's a national security issue? Um, I don't. I don't think so, because I think there are plenty of other national security issues. Um, if we were concerned about mining data of Americans by the Chinese government, we would be banning a lot of other things that are currently in households. Um, I mean, and also, it's not just China that's mining our information. United States is also right in there getting a lot of personal information from us.
Yeah.
So so that part I'm not too overly concerned about, which I know is probably a very, young millennial thing to say, which is they already have all my information anyway. It's kind of nihilistic, I suppose. But when it comes to, say, like censorship in that regard, I obviously First Amendment, amazing. That's what's allowing us to even have this conversation.
Yeah.
My concern isn't so much with, say, the security and the information mining, and it's not even so much with TikTok itself. I'll tell you something that I've seen on there a lot, though, which is that I have a lot of friends that have become very popular on TikTok, and I don't know how or why.
Wow.
I don't know how any of that makes sense. But one thing that I have heard from them is that the amount of hate speech and bullying and racist, anti-Semitic comments and content that's being put out on that platform is more so than they've seen on anything else. So I wonder, and also it tends, even though those things get reported, it seems like on that platform, they don't really get dealt with really at all by whoever the moderators of this app are. Where if you were on Instagram and you reported something, they do a pretty good job of taking care of it if it truly is racist or homophobic or sexist, whatever it is. But TikTok, I've heard a lot of negative comments regarding that. So I don't know that it should be banned, but I would love to see some more improvement on that front. And then finally, when it comes down to the whole, are we banning it or will Microsoft buy it? Honestly, this whole thing feels like it's just a setup to allow Trump to pat himself on the back in a couple months. Because if Microsoft does buy it, one, that is a huge buyout by a huge corporation, and we know he's going to take credit for it. And do we really need another giant company buying a giant company? It just, all of it's kind of a mess, and I don't even know where to begin with it, because I'm sure the story has only just begun to unravel.
Yeah. So me personally, I definitely have an issue with any social media corporation mining our data, and
Yeah.
most people don't even know what they're doing that. Facebook, Twitter, all of them do this
Oh,
same thing.
Facebook is so bad about it.
I mean, if we talk, you and I talk outside of this about like pillows or something, you're gonna get a pillow ad in 5 minutes.
Yep.
Because that's the thing. They listen to our conversations and then they sell that metadata to corporations. So I don't like that when the communist Chinese government does it, and I don't like when our United States government does it. When it comes to certain people, I actually do think it's a big concern. Like our military, I think like people in the military, I think that's a concern. I don't think they
That is,
should.
yeah, I agree.
I think they should have a lot of discipline when it comes to military, not have people using it and stuff like that. or people in the United States government. I think that's an issue as well. But your average Joe Schmo, like you like cats, who cares?
Yeah.
So I think it's an issue, but I think the president is making a way bigger issue than it really is,
Sounds
and
about right.
which is definitely apparent for our current administration. They focusing on things that are kind of important, but not as important as the main issue when it comes to our current situation, when it comes to coronavirus and our economic situation, to say bleakly. But yeah, let's ban TikTok and not give people unemployment and everything. That's
Yeah.
the definitely ineffectual of the current government we have. Both sides is
Oh, a
been
typical distraction that they've
yeah
been good at for 4 years now.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's been that whole situation has been really frustrating to me.
Yeah.
So let me go back to my phone right quick. Let's see here. So you did a little video about the Tulsa Forum thing Thursday. Can you tell me a little bit about that, and what are you personally going to kind of aggravate for and want to do, have your voice in that situation?
Yeah, so there's a couple of events coming up that the candidates are they've all been invited to. One
Okay.
thing personally that I'll kind of mention real quick is frustration with those events. To be honest, none of them are truly, I would say, organized by any proper organization, I guess, or community. They're generally kind of just thrown together. And so I'll give them that benefit of the doubt. But one thing that's happened for just about every single one of those is that our campaign doesn't get invited. We have not, I don't think we've been in the first round of invitations for any of it. And generally don't get invited until another candidate asks why we weren't, or we have to reach out to them and say, you sent out an invitation to literally every other candidate except for ours. It's a culture of not taking us seriously because we're young, and we know that. I mean, it's been clear over and over that a lot of people in this city and a lot of people involved in these events do not care that some 26-year-old is running for elected office. It's not common here. But the thing is, that's one of the main reasons we're doing it. We're trying to step up and stop being dependent on people who do not value our voice. Right now, it's time to finally step onto the scene and start making decisions, because frankly, if they're not going to listen to us in regular conversation, let alone in a situation like this where a quick Google search or the PDF that they already used to invite other people, where my name is clearly there, if they're not even going to include me because next to my name is the number 26 and he's just the kid candidate, well, then we have a serious issue.
Yeah.
So yeah, one of the things I'm excited about is actually being able to have these kind of conversations and being able to say, look, we have some serious issues that are going ignored. One, there are people who are suffering greatly from a lack of income and a lack of support from their community and their city by a group of people who, their whole job is to make sure that the city continues running. And one of those ways is, like we talked about earlier, income inequality. Those are things we have to tackle. Another thing that I'm interested to talk about is on the same topic of age is that right now, I was just looking at this. Right now, the youngest person currently serving was in high school at the same time as my mom.
Wow.
That's how big the generational gap is.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I don't know how your mom is, but my mom does not know what questions to ask to know what I need in life. She has no idea. And from what we've seen of the current city council, they don't know either. There's nothing wrong with being in your 40s, 50s, and 60s. Not at all. But when it comes to issues that you are supposed to be tackling all demographics of Tulsans, we need someone in there who can actually represent another sect of that, which currently we are not seeing.
Yeah.
Another thing I'm interested to talk about is right now, of course, is the whole police situation. A very common question in some of these forums and questionnaires that we've been sent out is whether or not we would accept money or campaign contributions from the Fraternal Order of Police, which is apparently a much bigger hot button of a topic than I originally thought it was going to be. We currently are seeing some candidates who are being endorsed by the Fraternal Order of Police and are given who knows how much money behind the scenes to basically run. When asked if I would take money from the Fraternal Order of Police, first of all, I don't see a reality in which they ever would. It would be real strange that they would want to give money. But that being said, it does take money to run a campaign, and I'm not going to change on my stances or issues for the Fraternal Order of Police, but I will take money from them, and then I will use that money to put into advertising my views on a strong Office of Independent Monitor and reallocating some of the police budget into things like nonprofits that'll act as first responders for mental illness, or mental health crises, and non-crime related calls. So that's what I would use that money for specifically if they did donate to the campaign.
So I saw on your page that one called your name incorrectly, called you Larry Miller, and they said that you wanted to defund police. I want you to expand on that, and if you don't support defund the police, or do you support defund the police? What exactly do you mean by that? And because that I think should have a lot more nuance in that discussion than it has. And two, first, actually, sorry, you just want to answer that question. Is that true? One, your name is not Larry, obviously, but is that correct? Do you want to defund the police or not?
Well, you know, what I find interesting about that story is that was posted on something called the Tulsa Beacon, which is been around for almost 20 years. I think they started in 2001, and they are notorious for being very critical of non-Republicans, and they've run some really awful things about Planned Parenthood and about gay people and even about Harry Potter. I mean, they've really run the gambit on that kind of thing. But
random.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's a weird fascination and obsession that he has with Charles Biggs is the guy that runs it. It seems to have for things like Harry Potter. But one of the things regarding that is that nowhere publicly, I don't even think privately, have I even uttered the phrase defund the police. I do not have much of a stance publicly on record with the police. Now, that does not mean that I don't have some very strong opinions regarding it. I 100% support taking another look at that police budget and limiting severely how much money is going into it. Because on one hand, we have to understand that the police themselves have been given a lot of duties that are not just enforcing the law. We're expecting them to go out to different calls about different things and, you know, helping, you know, all kinds of, I mean, we expect them not only to catch people who are speeding or recklessly driving, which is really the biggest concern, I think, there, but also things like domestic abuse house calls, which are important, mental health crises, which can definitely be handled a little better than just having a man with a badge and a gun walk up to you while you're having a crisis. That has not been working for us. So we're expecting them to do all these different things, but in doing that, we're not training them properly. And I know that this is not like a super this is such a polarizing issue because on one hand we say, yeah, they're not being trained properly and we're not funding it properly. And I 100% believe that we're giving them too much money and too much power with no restraint. We see it all the time. I mean, the last two and a half months have been dedicated to that and saying we need some serious change, not just in our police force, but systematically in the entire law enforcement hierarchy from top to bottom. It's gotten so out of hand. I apologize. So now I'm all flustered about it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Because it's so frustrating to see that. So even though I've never once said defund the police, I do strongly believe in an Office of Independent Monitor that basically audits every move they make, making sure that we no longer have just police officers wasting tax dollars and abusing power. And definitely limiting budgets. And almost, I think the correct way of saying it is when a line is crossed or a law is broken by the police, we limit their funds because nothing speaks louder than taking money away from them. And I think they will very quickly start to respond to that. So in a way, you could say that I support defund the police, but I would use different wording.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
Reallocating funds.
Reallocating funds is
Definitely I think people are conflating the two things. One, people just want to defund when it comes to just reallocating funds, and some people actually just mean abolish police, which they should say abolish police, which I think
right. They kind of go together. Yeah.
Which I completely don't support that. I definitely do think. I think this question when it comes to that is, I definitely think it needs to have more nuance. I think the blanket statement like nationally is defund the police. I think certain areas definitely have way too much money in this country when it comes to the police department, and when statistically proven and just my personal opinion is crime is caused by poverty and lack of opportunity. For the most part, I mean, you have bad people, but that's why we have police for. But for the most part, most people are good people, and if they're doing things that aren't good, more likely than not is the situation they're in financially, and a lot of people just don't have the opportunities that other people do in this city and this entire country. So I think I think that's when it comes to this issue, I think it's more of a local issue. I definitely think we need to start looking at these police budgets. Why all is this money? Why do you have all this money, and what are you using it for? Because we, like you said, is it like $118 million or roughly a police budget?
It's I think 122.5 million for this upcoming year. Yeah.
Okay.
And then plus 876,000 now.
Yeah, and our public schooling is. I was talking to 121 Negro Spiritual about this, and he was saying, he said that now I haven't personally looked at this number, but he said that our public schools is like $18 million. So I don't know if that's correct or not, but I definitely know it's not funded well enough. And if I don't know if we necessarily even need to take money away from police, but we do definitely need to look into way more transparency, which is what you really fight for, which I appreciate, is where's all this money going and why is it going there? And
no, absolutely.
That's the thing. You and I are both progressives. I'm a little different though. I want smart government, not just big government for no reason or little government for no reason. Yeah. I am kind of like a leftist kind of libertarian in certain ways. I think certain government is way too big and certain government is not too big. So I think we definitely need to have smart, very efficient government. And certain things are definitely too bloated and certain things don't get paid well enough and don't get money thrown to them enough, so to speak. So Um, I definitely support the argument, of course. Speaking of the police, I about the Black Lives Matter monument or mural on the street. How do you feel about that? I want to hear your opinion on that, because the person that's the leading candidate in a Democratic side for our mayor is Greg Robertson,
Yes.
and I think he nailed it on the head when it came to a lot of things in his little speech he released.
Mhm.
I think either yesterday or the day before. He hit on, like, we're expecting too much of the police, and we're making them social workers. Like,
Yeah.
this, like, so many things. Like, he like, I don't remember exactly everything he said off the top of my brain, but he nailed it on the head. And after a few years ago, when those officers got murdered by that person in Dallas, their
Yeah.
commissioner was talking about, after that happened, he was talking about, we're expecting too much for cops. Like, in his local area, he was talking about, like, why do we have cops chasing loose dogs and things like that? And we definitely need to focus on making these cops' jobs safer and easier,
Yeah.
and having the good cops, make sure have the good cops hold their fellow officers that are bad cops accountable as well. I think that's one of the ways that we can fix a lot of these issues. Um, and
Yeah.
I think definitely having consequences for their actions as well. Again, when Negro's Future and I were talking, he was saying, like, some of these cops are kind of like children, and they keep on doing bad things, and we're not holding them accountable. Well, with a child, if they
Yeah.
keep on doing things that are not correct, and you don't fix that problem, they're going to keep on doing it because they don't understand that's a problem. Well, the cops understand that's a problem, but they're not going. If you don't hold people accountable, then they're going to continue to do those things. So
Yeah.
I think that's definitely something we need to start doing more. With the whole Black Lives Matter mural, how do you feel about that? Do you feel like we need to take that down, or do we need to preserve that? And how do you feel about that?
Yeah. You know, it's such a, it's, I can understand why both sides of that argument reach the conclusion that they do. I fully support it being there. I think it's an important part of um, not just the national story, but especially locally. As we talked about on the last time I was on this show, how Tulsa's history with racial inequality is not exactly a shining mark. Uh, I mean, we have struggled with that and continue to.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been amazing to see so many people step up and really try and uh, address that and say, this is our past and it's time to embrace the future, knowing what we know and trying to make right the fact that we've ignored it for nearly 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's time for education regarding it. It's time to uh, put money into these communities. This is a big conversation we've been having, you know, and that's also the thing is like that kind of brings us into the whole reparations conversation. I've heard a lot of talk recently about kind of taking a good chunk of our budget and putting it into the Greenwood district and to the neighborhoods kind of around that, and really trying to push the idea that we are not just sweeping this area under the rug. Like we're not just ignoring it. And I think nothing says we are not ignoring you or we are working to make sure that that doesn't continue to happen more than giant yellow letters in the middle of our street.
Mm-hmm.
That says so much. I mean, it says a lot about unity and the fact that we are willing to say something. It's been amazing seeing how many people have shown up to these different protests and these different events. It's been amazing. I 100% support it being there, and I think that it needs to stay. I think there's an interesting way that the city council could deal with this. Right now, I'm concerned going into this. Sorry to break the fourth wall, but we're recording it on a Wednesday, and this decision is going to be talked about today, and might actually already be talked about right now. I'm interested to see how the council handles this. I think there's a way that you can make this a part of the going into the 100th year memorial of the Tulsa Race Massacre, and saying this is a part of that. It is honoring all of the lives that have come and gone since that happened, and make it a part of the history. And therefore, if you do that, it's going to be really difficult to get it taken down. On the other side of that, I completely understand the whole, if we allow one message on the street, we got to allow the other messages on the street. And of course, you can do that by approval, and you're going to get a lot of pushback no matter what. Because it is a public forum, and you kind of have to. So I understand why both of these arguments reach this conclusion. I think, and I understand that a lot of people say, well, if we allow this, where do we draw the line? And I think that's a very silly argument, in my opinion, not to discredit those people, because again, I get it. I get this conversation. I understand, but this is a special part of our history and a special part of the culture of Tulsa, and being a progressive diamond in the middle of a red ocean of Republican ideals and views. And we get to live in this very, very special part of this part of the country where we are able to put things like that on our streets, and people don't lose their minds. We didn't have anyone like in New York City when people were just trying to paint over it. I mean, we've done a good job of, as a community, leading this conversation in Oklahoma. And I think that's why it's so important to leave that message up.
Yeah. I do definitely think we should leave that up. I can understand certain people having problems with it. I disagree with that problems, but
yeah.
I understand those, and the slippery slope argument I get as well. I think it's a bit of semantics in my eyes, but I can see why people say that. I think it's good, but I think we need to do a lot more. I think it's just symbolism, and honestly, good symbolism, but symbolism in general. And I think these people just want to, hey, let's just do this and do nothing else, because doing more things, like we were discussing earlier, you're going to get a lot of pushback, and you actually have to do things in government. And when you do symbolism like that, no one really pushes back usually as much as actually doing things that actually help people's lives. And when I'm talking about the people that don't push back in the symbolism, but push back in actually doing people's lives, is usually donors. And those big money interests that fund a lot of people's campaigns, especially corrupt politicians' campaigns. And a lot of very wealthy donors don't like their people that might be a little blatant about this, but people they buy, they don't want them to actually help the people. They just want them to hold very moderate views that help corporations. So we're going to get out of here pretty quick. I just got a couple more questions. I want you to plug as much stuff as you can. One kind of question I just personally have. So I see a lot of signs around Tulsa. I see like a lot of Kojo signs. I see a lot of Gary Robinson signs. A lot of just people just running for state house, state senate, things like that. And you have your signs. Where exactly are the rules for those signs? And where can people put those that they won't get you or themselves in trouble? And what are exactly the rules when it comes to that?
Oh boy, they are long and complicated, but there's a few simple it's like a simple checklist you can kind of do, and you're pretty much okay. So private property, if a person owns that patch of grass out front of their house, you're good. I've heard some issues regarding rent, but I think that's just a personal politics thing with their landlord. because I've not really seen that that's a problem. But I think if your landlord asks you to take it down, you have to, I think. But the biggest one is the law says 12 feet from the curb, which I don't think I've seen with a single yard sign this year. But you're supposed to keep it 12 feet from the curb or the sidewalk, whichever is further back. But I see a lot of signs just right there on the street. And, you know, I don't know who monitors that. There's a group of people who are certified to do that, but I've not seen or heard anything. But you can't just go plop them down in any, you know, business yard unless that specific business is endorsing you, but not all businesses can endorse a candidate. It's that part I don't fully understand, which luckily no big businesses are getting behind me. I don't know if that's lucky, but I don't, that's kind of another thing is right now there's an argument, especially in District 4, about transparency regarding donors, because this is not, I'm not saying anything about the other candidates, but you know, the incumbent, of course, all incumbents, they take in a lot of money when they're running for re-election. So there's a lot of money coming into that account. And then we have someone else who is pretty much, rumor has it, they're solely backed by people like the Fraternal Order of Police. Another candidate has a lot of rich friends in Tulsa. So they'll kind of have a good amount of income coming in. And during the filing period, and this is going to tell you a lot about my campaign. So the incumbent's the only one that actually filed this previous quarter of campaign donations and expenditures, which you have to do every, I think it's like 3 months, maybe it's 2 months. And you have to put who donated to your campaign, what you spent that money on, because the FEC wants to make sure that you're not just money laundering. Yeah. But she's the only one that turned in any paperwork. The other two didn't, and I didn't, because we currently don't meet the requirements to have to file because our campaign is funded by young people who do not have money already. It's, you know, the other day I was actually thinking about it, about how I was driving through some neighborhoods, and I was still waiting on our yard signs to come in because we were behind. Not only did we have, you know, we went from being 3 weeks behind to I feel like we're just 1 week behind by being out of the race and getting back in. But I still feel like we've shortened that. But it's been, you know, we've had to really work. And I was driving through the neighborhoods and I was seeing all these yard signs from the other candidates. And, you know, they were typically in front of houses that I'll never afford. But I was like, it was very discouraging to see this and being like, you know, we have a strong message and we have a strong group of people who really believe in what we're talking about. But the normal person may not know that because, you know, these other candidates, these other campaigns are running around with 1,000-yard signs. And I'm running around like a kid at a concession stand where I'm like, what will this $20 get me? Because, you know, I think the correct term of grassroots is exactly what this is, because, you know, we barely make it by, and we do it. We have signs, we have literature to pass out, we have advertising that's going on, but, you know, we really have to work for it. And I think that people are going to be pleasantly surprised come August 25th when the vote is. So there's your first plug. August 25th when people are voting for mayor, which personally I'll be casting my vote for Greg Robinson, but also for city council for people like me and a lot of other great candidates. Nat in District 5, great. Shannon Morgan, I believe, is District 6. She's great as well. And there's a lot of other great people, but those are the two that I really like. So in doing that, I think people are going to be pleasantly surprised by the turnout that our campaign has, because we don't have 1,000-yard signs out. We don't have that kind of thing, because a lot of the people that are young and voting for us, they don't own their own property. They're in apartments or they're renting a house and they just don't have a yard to put it in. Like, we are working with a new demographic of people. And I mean, young people who notoriously have a low voter turnout. But I think we're really going to change that this year. We've been having some great conversations, so I'm super excited about it.
Speaking of younger voter turnout, what exactly are you trying to do to get to younger people in your district and just in Tulsa in general?
Yeah.
Come out and vote, because we're getting up there in that age that we need to really need to get politically involved, because
Yes.
politics affects, especially this year. I don't know if people realize this or not, but politics matters and it affects our lives. And this year especially, it affects everyone's lives. So what exactly are you doing to get the youth vote out?
Yeah, well, that's kind of one of the biggest things is making sure people understand that politics is personal. Like it affects every decision they make in Washington, D.C., no matter which clown is doing it, still sprays us with the water out of the flower. I mean, we all get it. That affects every one of us. And I think it's, so a couple of things we've been doing is we held a voter registration drive-through where we had a lot of people. We encouraged people to just drive up in their cars. Everybody had masks. We would hand them the information they need, kind of walk them through it. They never had to leave their cars, and they got registered to vote. People didn't even know how easy it was. That was another thing, is we really promoted how easy it was just to get registered to vote. Because for some reason, and I haven't figured it out, we've been trying to figure this out for months now, is that young people, not only is there a lack of accessibility to just government and politics in general, but even getting involved in the way of voting, it just feels like it's an unattainable task. We don't even know how to do it. So one thing we've been doing is educating people and saying, listen, it is so easy to register to vote. It's one page. You fill out your information, and that's it. That's all. And then on August 25th day, when you can vote for mayor and city council, you walk into a room, you show them your ID or whatever proof of identity you have, and then you fill out a box, and that's it. Because people don't understand, and I had no idea. Young people don't understand that it's literally that easy, which I did not know. And so we've been really doing that, but also just really pushing people and letting them know, like, hey, every decision matters. We've been doing some very targeted advertising, which is something that it's kind of a system we've been developing, and it's working a lot better than we probably ever intended it to, where we've basically segmented out every neighborhood in District 4. And then we went out to those neighborhoods, we drove around, we talked to people that were outside working on their yard or jogging or taking out their dogs. And we basically did a quick poll, and we're like, what is the biggest thing locally that concerns you? What about this neighborhood specifically concerns you? And if we couldn't find anyone, we would just look around and say, well, the roads in this neighborhood are pretty bad. So the people here, that's the first thing on their mind. So then what we did is we segmented that out, and we created Facebook ads that targeted that mile radius or half-mile radius, whatever that neighborhood size is. And we started with an ad that basically was like, about roads. And we said, we care about roads. And then what we would put in there is we would say, these are also the things we care about. This is what this campaign stands for. And we would put in a message about voting. And we got great response from that. And that's been our way of being able to knock door to door without having to physically go knocking door to door and potentially spread a horrible virus. Yeah. So that's been our biggest way of reaching people where they are and being like, this is so important to be involved right now, because we're all being locked away in our houses where we feel like we have zero power except whatever we tweet out. But the thing is, we have so much more power than that, especially in local elections, because every single vote counts. Most local elections are decided by anywhere between 10, 100, 200 votes. I mean, that's how close they usually are. And so it's very important for people to understand the gravity of those situations of saying, the future of this city literally is lying in your hands. And all you have to do is make sure that you're registered to vote and you show up between 7 and 7 on a Tuesday. So we've really been trying to make sure that people understand how important it is, but also how easy it is, because that convenience of being able to vote, which is such a beautifully American thing, of being like, it's so easy to go fight for your freedom by just walking into a room. We still have to make it sure that it's easy enough to do it, which I love. But so yeah, that's been our main outreach, to make sure that people understand how important this is.
Yeah, it really is important. Last question, we're going to get out of here. I want you to
Okay.
plug as much as you can. So you are young, and why city council? Why are you running for city council instead of like state representative or state senate?
Yeah. Well, the thing about city council is it's the first line. It's the first contact with government that you'll ever have.
Mm-hmm.
You may not ever meet your state representative. You may not ever meet the person that represents you in Congress. You may not ever even meet your mayor. But a city councilor, you know them. They
Mm-hmm.
live in your neighborhood, or they know someone that lives in your neighborhood. They're all within 1 or 2 degrees of separation. At least a good city councilor.
Yeah.
Because that's what the job is. It's saying, what is the problem that the people in the mayorship and the people in Senate that they don't even know about? What do they not know about that is affecting you right now?
Yeah.
Those are the biggest questions. And frankly, that's your first line of getting something done. It's the first line of being a true advocate for things you care about. The biggest thing that comes with city council is you're voting for people. You're voting for the consensus of your district. So whatever this group of people believes in, well, that's ultimately where you cast your vote. But what comes with that position is an ability to speak on different topics and to say, and to have the discussion regarding different issues and problems in our communities. Of being able to say, listen, this mural that's in our street is an important cultural icon and a touch point for what we're doing and the fight that we're all in right now.
Yeah.
Of fighting against racial injustice and inequality. Well, not everyone understands that,
Mm-hmm.
especially in Tulsa. I mean, we're such a weirdly diverse politically city that a lot of people don't understand that that's the meaning behind these letters in downtown. So it's important for a city councilor to be able to talk to these people. I've spent my entire life as a communicator, just being able to talk to people. That's how I've been paid my whole life. That's my job.
Yeah.
So being able to have these conversations with people and saying, this is why these things are important. This is why these decisions need to be made. And knowing that ultimately, I believe one way doesn't mean that I'll be able to vote that way. I'm going to ultimately have to vote with the people, and honestly be proud to do so, because even if I don't agree, I know that these people have the best intentions for our city and for the future. And listen, you're not supposed to say this as a politician, but I've been wrong before. And if I'm wrong about something, I want to be able to have that conversation with people to do it. And as a state representative, it's a lot more difficult to have that conversation. Right now, I can talk to each person directly. Maybe not during a pandemic, but normally speaking, you can talk to each person directly and find out who they are, why they believe what they believe, and then work to make sure that you're preserving a future that values that voice, even if you don't agree with it. And that's a city councilor, in my opinion.
That's a great answer. All righty. Well, we're going to get out of here. Do you have anything else to say? I definitely want you to plug everything you have.
Yeah, of course. Landry for Tulsa. That's the website. It's also all my social media, so you can find me on pretty much everything there. We've been trying to keep up with all of that. But we get kind of bogged down in having conversations with people that we forget to post sometimes.
Yeah.
But Landry for Tulsa. Also, by the time this comes out, within people watching this on the day it comes out or the day after, I'll have a much more in-depth page on my website, landryfortulsa.com / we'll call it minimum wage is what we'll call that web page, where you can go look at my actual basically proposal for why Tulsa should increase the minimum wage.
Okay.
But I'm working on that page right now, and so it'll be up here in the next couple of days. And I think that is a super important thing, that if anyone is even slightly interested in, to take a look at that and see why it's possible that we could do that right here. I also want to say for people to make sure they're keeping up with what's happening in Tulsa, because there's a lot of really important things happening right now, and a lot of really important things that are going to be happening. There's also a lot of incredible people who are really fighting for us. A really great mayoral candidate that I believe has all of our best interests in heart, and it can do some really cool things for the city that I would really encourage people to go vote for. But there's a lot of really cool things that are on the horizon. And I think that right now we're on the verge of some generational turnover, and that's only natural. We haven't seen it in Tulsa for a much longer period than most places see it. So I'm very excited to see where we go from here. LandryForTulsa.com, that's that.
And where can you use like the signs and everything else? Just the website?
Yeah, if you just go to the website, there's all kinds of things you can click on. There's a yard sign request. Also, if you're just on my social media, if you're like on my Instagram or my Twitter, and you don't want to go all the way to the website because it's so inconvenient, you could just message me directly, and we'll get you all taken care of.
All righty.
So if you want signs, if you want anything like that, we'll get you. All
right, great. Oh man, thank you for being on the show again.
Thanks. No, I really enjoyed it. I would even come back for a third time. I know that's controversial, but.
All right. Thank you, man. I appreciate you for being on the show again. This is the Uprising.
It's the Uprising.